planning for the wedding, I remember it being a happy time because my mom was very excited, and Lee's parents were very excited too. But my mom was so fun. She would go out and buy like all the bride. She'd come home and I'd be sitting there and she'd slap in front of me 5 different bride magazines. And I mean, just to sit there and flip through and imagine, like you feel like Cinderella. You're looking at all these pictures and thinking that you get to go pick one out, and we did. I did all that stuff with my mom, except for my dress. I was a little kooky. That's when those Say Yes to the Dress shows weren't on TV. I didn't know how it was done. And one day I went browsing by myself and found the dress kind of without my mom there, by myself, but I brought her back and tried it on for her, and she fell in love with it, and I had fallen in love with it. That's why I brought her back. But it wasn't any great like bridal shopping experience because I just didn't know. I just popped into a store one day and said, "Oh, let me try on dresses." And stupidly, it was like the first store I ever went into, and it was like the second dress I put on. So I really didn't know what the heck I was doing. She asked me, "Do you know?" I said, "Yeah, I think it's perfect," and she agreed. But the whole planning process was a great experience from what I remember. I had lots of bridesmaids because it wasn't going to be a question of how many. I know a lot of people look and say, "Boy, you had a lot of people." For me, the people in my bridal party were no doubt going to be siblings. Well, in my family, there's 1 boy and 3 girls. In Lee's family, there's 1 girl and 3 boys. So right there, you have 6 people. That's siblings. And at the time, I had my high school friends were my best friends. I thought I will never find another group of friends so spectacular. And I had 4 best friends in high school, and then I got to college and I made another 3 like best friends there. And I wasn't going to eliminate people because of number. Like these were the people that meant a ton to me. So we had a large bridal party. We ended up having like, oh my gosh, what did I say? There was 3 siblings, and then there was 4 high school friends, so that's 7. And then there was another 3 college. So we had a good 20 people in the bridal party, and bride and groom. We were up to 22 people. So it was a large thing, but I couldn't cut anybody out. I wasn't going to cut the siblings out, and I wasn't going to cut the best friends ever out. So it was fun. It was a little challenging because some people were away in regards to the whole bridal party dress shopping thing. But it was fun along the way. It was no pressure. We just took one step at a time. And
did Lee have the good sense to stay out of it, or was he in every detail?
He liked being a part of it. He liked. We went looking at the bands together and stuff with the moms. The place my parents had chosen because it was where they got married, and all of our siblings were there. My parents were paying for that portion of the wedding and stuff, so we settled on the place together. But it was all a really good, fun experience along the way.
Any bridezilla experiences?
No, not a one. Not a one. Nothing like what you see on TV. No, everybody was great. It was great. I can't even imagine a bridezilla experience if you watch that stuff. Nothing at all like that. It was a happy time, and everyone at the time, I'm close in age to my siblings, and my friends were getting married. So every year there was a wedding. Some years there were 2 weddings and stuff. So it was a fun time of year for everybody, whether you were the bride or the bridesmaid. It was just a great time in our lives to have one festive event like that after another of these people that you love. It was awesome.
Now, all right, tell me about the wedding.
The wedding, oh my gosh. Well, let's see. The wedding day, I got married in the church that we went to Sunday Mass in my hometown. And I always liked this church because it was like a steeple. It looked like a steeple. It was like an A-frame. And it was a beautiful day. I got to, at the time I liked doing some hands-on things. So I remember making some pretty bow and floral arrangements for the pews and stuff like that. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and I just remember waiting with my dad to go down that aisle, and my mom was beaming, and my sisters and family and friends, everybody lined up. The church, I remember, being filled. And I remember looking down that aisle and just seeing all these people grinning at you, and seeing my little floral arrangements that I did. I chose to put them on all the pews instead of just a lot of times they'll do it just on the first couple of pews where the families sit. And I just felt like everybody is special because they chose to come today to participate in the wedding. So I had done these little floral arrangements that were tied around all the pews, and it just looked so beautiful lining this aisle. And it was just an awesome day. Like I think most brides will tell you, it went fast. You get to the party, and it's you're greeting everyone. You're overwhelmed with all the people, and it was just it was an awesome event. And next thing you know, it's done. We went to Bermuda, which was very nice, but. And it was great for a honeymoon. We stayed at this place called the Pink Beach Club and Cottages, and we had basically our own cottage on the beach, and it was beautiful. The water was stunning, and the place was fantastic. At dinner each night, you'd put in your order for breakfast, and you had the choice of walking up to the dining room, or in each cottage they had a kitchen. They'd send somebody at the cottage, and they'd whip you up whatever you wanted. And you could mark off everything on the menu, and they'd bring up everything, and they'd come out to your balcony, and they'd set out a tablecloth and bring out all the food that you ordered, and you would eat it right in your cottage overlooking the ocean. And then we'd go up to the dining hall at dinner or whatever, the restaurant on the resort. It was perfect and beautiful. Our only downfall there was that you had to get around by the mopeds, and I couldn't do it. I just had too much fear, and the roads there are all cobble, and a lot of them are lined with cobble walls, and they weren't very wide. They're not much bigger than the car. And he and I rented the mopeds, and we went around a parking lot a couple of times to get practice, and I couldn't stop it, and I ended up driving right through these hedges. I remember taking pictures of my legs, which were all scratched up. So then we turned my moped in, and I tried riding on his, and I was still just too full of fear. So we bagged it and had to use public transportation the whole time. So we were getting on the bus going to the different parts of the island. But it was actually fun because we would stop at a grocery store, load up with whatever snacks and waters, get dropped off at a certain spot on the island, and maybe go hike around whatever beach that was, or different area. And what was neat is that each time we'd get to the bus stop, we'd speak with some of the locals, and they would tell us about Bermuda and the island and things like that. And I remember one guy telling me, don't feel bad about not doing the moped thing. He goes, we've sent people home in body bags. So I felt like I made the right choice. But so that was the down part of it, was that I wasn't keen on the mopeds. But it was beautiful. It was a beautiful honeymoon. Married life was it was great. I mean, you're you're not single anymore. You're two people in your 20s, mid-20s, with your own house, and we both had our jobs and have dinner. And at the time we had a dog. That was our only responsibility. So we did a lot of day tripping and a lot of vacations and stuff like that. It was a fun, free time of your life where just do whatever you want and go wherever you want, and that's it. It's fun. And then at some point, we started to have the discussion about children, and we always used to say either we wanted 0 or 2, and we used to lean more towards the 0 side, and because we always felt bad for only children, thinking that it must be somewhat lonely. And he knew 1 or 2 single children and people that grew up single, and I did too. And everyone always said that they wished they had a sibling. So we always said 0 or 2. And I never said more than 2 because I was always afraid that I wouldn't be able to afford more than 2. So at some point we talked about it, and Lee came around and said that he would be willing. He used to tell people no kids, no kids, no kids, and I always felt like whatever happens happens. If God allows me to have children, then I'm lucky, and if my body does not do it, that so be it. That's what I will deal with. And at some point, Lee decided that he wanted kids too, and I did too at this point. A lot of our friends were starting to have kids, and I started to see the joy that they were having with them, and I couldn't imagine what would a little Rosette and Lee look like. What would it be like, this person that's just from us and nobody else? I can't imagine. And we decided to go for it, and then we had Marissa.
Tell me how you felt when you first found out you were pregnant.
Excited and scared. Scared because I didn't know what I was getting into, and extremely excited. Ninette at this point had Dante, and he was the only other grandchild. And I was just, you adored him. He was this adorable little boy that was so loving. I couldn't imagine, like, now we have our own little mini me coming in. So we were excited, and I just couldn't wait to see what this little person was going to look like.
It was a little scary, too.
It was a little scary. It was a little scary because I didn't know. I was never really around kids when I was little, but I had, my parents to guide us. I mean, my father was a pediatrician. Who better than to guide you? And my mother had 4 kids of her own. And Lee's mom had 4 kids, and she grew up around a ton because my mother-in-law was like one of 10. So I knew that we had lots of people to guide us.
Tell me a little bit more about how you felt and how you both felt when you found out you were pregnant.
Well, we were obviously very excited, and I think I had found out right before my 30th birthday, and Lee had thrown me a surprise party. Actually, we were having a beach barbecue surprise party up at Callahan's Beach in Comac, and I had known, and obviously Lee had known, and we hadn't told anybody yet. We were going to wait. It must have been September. I must have only been like a month pregnant, and we didn't tell any of the family or anything yet. And actually, I think we had just told the family. We hadn't told the friends yet. And of course, we were busting at the seams, with excitement. And my little nephew Terrence happened to sit on a picnic bench next to one of my high school friends, Karen. And she told me this afterwards. She said, little Terrence sat there and looked and said, I'm not supposed to tell anyone that Aunt Rosette is pregnant. And of course, my best friend was like, what? Now, at this point, she had already had 2 kids of her own. And I think our other friend had 1 child, but the rest of us didn't have any. And of course, it's my first. So she marched right over to me. Do you have something to tell me? So Terrence spilled the beans at my 30th birthday party. So I think we ended up letting the cat out of the bag. And ironically, our friends, Kevin and Deb, Kevin went to high school with Lee, and they were at my party. And Deb was pregnant too and hadn't told anybody. And I think one of my other friends kept pushing alcohol on her. And afterwards, she told me, your friend Lynn kept handing me another bottle of beer. She said, every time she looked, I was like throwing it over my shoulder. And down the road, what was funny is that we wound up at the same, they had lived in Lindenhurst and we were in Comac, and somehow wound up at the same Lamaze class in between. And what a ball that was. When they walked in at the same Lamaze classes that we were taking, it just was such a hoot. But it was so much excitement too. It was so much excitement for the families because on Lee's side, everybody used to tease him because his older sibling and his sister, his older brother Larry, and then his sister Kathy had several kids, and it was always lots of little kids, a lot of chaos, a lot of noise, and Lee was like the grumpy one who'd be like, kids, I hate kids, I hate kids. I say that jokingly, and so they all couldn't wait when Lee was going to have a kid. And then on my side, everybody was excited because it had been just Dante for 5 years and nobody else. So now all of a sudden, somebody was coming, and boy, did the floodgates open, because Dominic and Jackie were married a little bit after me, and then they started having kids. So we went from Dante by himself for 5 years, 5 or 6 years by the time Marissa was born. And then after that, it was 1 or 2 kids a year for the next 5 years. It was like we filled up quickly, and it was like a mob of kids now. But it was so great for them all to be the same ages. A lot of people, as I hear, say they loved being pregnant. Although I've had no health issues, I didn't love it. I actually disliked it. I loved having my child. I didn't care for the physical feeling of being pregnant. The anticipation of meeting your child was exciting. That's the best part of the pregnancy, not knowing, and then finally having a healthy baby. But I really didn't like the whole pregnancy part of it. I wish somebody could have just handed me a baby that was mine, and that be the end of it. But there's a lot of people out there that just absolutely love it. But that's not me. I'm not that. That's just not my opinion. But I loved having my kid. I mean, I loved the arrival of my daughters. It was unbelievable. My water had broke actually around midnight, and that was actually a bummer because it lasted all night long. The contractions. We kind of spoke to the doctor, and he said, "Come on in," because they were coming quickly, and then they came rapidly, but came to a halt. So we drove into the hospital, and I just got hooked up to the monitors and sat there till I think it was around 7 or 8 in the morning, and they would periodically check me, and I wasn't even close to being ready, but the contractions kept coming and coming and coming. So it was like, that part of it was not fun for me. Lee, on the other hand, was given a nice doctor's suite to go take a nap in. So they gave him pillows and blankets, and he got to go lay down on the doctor's suite, And I sat there having contractions till I think around 10 in the morning. I think I was finally ready. And I pushed for like 3 hours, and she just wasn't coming out after having contractions from midnight till 10 a.m. and then pushed for 3 hours. And I swear, I think the doctor confused me with Ninette, because finally he came in at like around 12:30 or so, and in the afternoon the next day, and he said, "Rosette, it's time. You have to have a C-section." And all I kept thinking is, my God, I thought you'd never ask. Like I would have given in 6 hours ago. But he was under the impression that I wanted to do this natural. I just wanted her out and healthy. I didn't care how she was coming out, to be honest with you. I just wanted her to be out and be with us. And I ended up having a C-section. And unfortunately, from all that labor, I remember at some point waking up at night. I think Marissa was born at, I think isn't that terrible? Marissa was born around 2 in the afternoon. And I remember being so unconscious at around 5 o'clock at night. I remember hearing Ninette's voice in the room. She came over. Everybody was in the room. I think both families were in the room. And I was so out that I wasn't even aware of it. And then finally Ninette came over and said, "Don't you want to see your baby girl? She's been here for an hour." And I remember opening my eyes and Ninette putting her in my arms and holding her for a few minutes, but feeling like I was going to drop her because I was so exhausted. So I really didn't get to enjoy her the first day. But then the next morning when I woke up, I couldn't wait to see her. I couldn't wait for them to bring her in, and they did. And then from there it was all awesome, because then it was all family filtering in back and forth, and then wheeling her in the bassinet and getting to feed her and see her. And you look at that little face and you think, like, what is she going to grow up to look like? You see this little face, you don't know what to expect. You can't even imagine what she would look like as a person later on. But there she was, this little tiny bundle. So cute.
Can you remember exactly how you felt when you held her for the first time?
I exhausted. When Ninette put her in, I literally said, "Oh my gosh, please take her. I'm going to drop her," because I couldn't stay awake. But the following
next
day,
morning, yeah.
that was it was following that was that night. But the following, oh yeah, just absolute joy, and I remember my parents being there when they brought her in, and my father's beaming and my mother's beaming, and I'm just like astonished, like you're in absolute awe, not knowing like what to even think or do now. Like it's just here she is, and just seeing this little face, it's just unbelievable from that moment on. Yeah, well, when we brought her home, I was in the hospital for a few days, and we brought her home, and my parents came home with us and helped me set up like what to do. I didn't know how to. Well, I fed her at the hospital. I was, not very confident in changing diapers. Neither was Lee. So they came home. We got home, and I think it was a rainy day, and there was, remember, banners on the doors and balloons and all that excitement, and coming in, and my dad actually taking charge because my mom was partially paralyzed, and we had set up like a changing table right in the living room because I had the C-section. I couldn't really do stairs and stuff, and my dad showing me how to change the diaper. It was actually my dad doing all that stuff because my mom couldn't, and I remember we had some good laughs because I was changing Marissa, getting ready to give her a little bath in the sink, and I walked her over somewhere, and my dad says, "Hey, Zette, look down at your foot." And I looked down, and I guess Marissa must have been pooing. It was all over my foot, and I didn't even know. Looking around like this kid is like pooping, and it was just such a learning experience. And they came over every day, and Lee's parents came over, and they'd bring food every day, and everyone would take turns holding. And you just kind of develop that comfort of having to take care of a baby, which I've never done before. And they would leave at night, and we got through the night, but every day looked forward to who's coming over today to help me. And then finally, you just start to kind of pick it up on your own. But having everybody around to take part, and everyone was so excited. All the nieces and nephews wanted to come over and see the new baby, and Lee's parents and my parents and my siblings. So it was a lot of excitement. Marissa was the second one to make an appearance on my side. So, and Lee's nieces and nephews were all real little, so they were all beaming, all excited to come over and see their new addition. So it was a great time.
Is she growing up into the young lady you hoped she would?
Absolutely. Marissa, I think, is an older soul, and part of the reason is because she was never really around a lot of little kids. She was the firstborn, and although we had cousins and stuff on Lee's side, they were a little bit older, and we didn't live in the same town, so we didn't see them on a daily basis. And the same thing with Dante on my side. And she's a really good listener, and always has been. Like, we'd sit in restaurants, and we'd have people come over and tell us what an incredible little girl this is, sitting there so quiet as a toddler. She just kind of did. She was around adults, so she acted like adults. She was never a kid that let loose, run around screaming, playing in the mud. She was a clean kid. She, don't do that, you get dirty. She listened. So she's absolutely like that today. She's just a very calm, laid back, polite, smart, beautiful girl. Everything that you would ever hope your child would be.
Tell me some stories about her as a baby.
I remember one time we took Marissa to a friend's party, and the kids, there were a lot of little kids running around, and there was like I think there was a bouncy castle, and Marissa was jumping in the bouncy castle, and they had a Lego station set up, and she was just running around like the kids are like little animals in a herd, getting all dirty and filthy, and she never really did that stuff around here because she just listened. She wasn't a messy kid. She just did what she was supposed to do, and she really let loose there. And then she came home, and she said to Lee and I, "Mommy, I had so much fun. And I'm looking at her thinking to myself, wow, that was kind of stoic and like, what, Marissa, did you really? And she said, yeah. And I could tell she was embarrassed, but she's like, yeah, I really did. And I'm like, well, say it. I'm like, tell me how much fun you had. She's like, I had fun. I'm like, no, say it. And it was kind of like that Tom Cruise movie where Cuba Gooding has him yell, show me the money, show me the money. And I made her get on the couch, jump up and down, and scream, I had so much fun, I had so much. And Leah's looking at me going, what are you doing to her? But it was so funny to see her let loose and jump up and down and be a kid. I didn't realize that we were, not that we weren't allowing her to be that way, that really it's okay to be that way, you know. She was just, she never really acted like a kid because she wasn't around, but she was so funny, and she's still a little like that today. That's her personality. She's not like a crazy center of attention, goofy child, which my next one turned out to be. Marissa was a very good baby. She didn't sleep a ton. She was one of those kids that just did like little 3-hour stints, and I think that was partly our fault. I think we probably should have been feeding her a little bit more. But she wasn't a big sleeper. I think at best she was giving us 6-7 hours sleeps, 6-7 hours sleep at 1 year old, which wasn't a lot of sleep. So I do remember the first 3 months. I actually, what I recall is that I don't remember much of the first 3 months of her life because there was such lack of sleep. But she was such an independent kid. She, you know, as a toddler and stuff, she'd get up in the morning. She'd just walk over, climb into bed with us, or just let me know that she's up. And when Elena had come along, Marissa was only 3 at the time, and we had put her into a regular bed, Elena, because I needed the crib for Elena. So Marissa was like 3.5, and she's sleeping in a queen bed in her room. And I remember my in-laws coming over like, what? That little squirt gets that whole big, huge bed? She just grew up quickly. She could handle it. You know, we put the side gates on, and she slept in her bed, and she was just a very independent, mature kid.
What are some of the crises she went through as a kid?
Crises?
I mean, did she ever come to you just absolutely devastated and crying?
Not really. She was such a laid-back kid. She really didn't have any issues as a kid. She didn't. She just kind of went in for things. When I brought her to preschool, I remember her, of course, I was nervous letting her go somewhere without me. And I remember dropping her off and talking to the teacher and stuff. And she went into this room, and I started to follow her, and she turned around and she said, no, you stay out there. And at that moment, I knew she was ready. I was like, okay, we're all good. She didn't. She took to preschool and all that stuff beautifully. She just really was such an easy kid. Just went along with whatever she was told. She trusts, you know, her mom and dad. She trusts your judgment. She had no reservations. She just did what she was told, and she's like that today.
How'd she get her name?
It's a variation of my middle name. Her name is Marissa Lee. My middle name is Marisa. But I knew that at the time Marissa was becoming a popular name, which I liked the name Marissa. And I knew if I named her Marisa that people were going to call her Marissa anyway. So I opted to call her Marissa, and her middle name is Lee after her dad. When she was a kid?
Yeah.
Oh my God, there was probably a lot of proud moments. I can't think of an isolated incident, but what I can tell you is that Marissa was taught her manners from a very early age. And constantly teachers and even preschool, kindergarten teachers, other parents would always tell me what fantastic manners my daughter has, how polite she is, what a good listener is. They would tell me, like teachers would say, I would come in and ask the kids, do not touch the computers. And she would be the only kid not touching the computers. Everybody would be, just hearing, like, as a parent, like, you always think your kid's fantastic, but to have confirmation from other people was such a source of pride for me because I knew she was great. It was just amazing that other people saw it. I remember one time we were at the pediatrician and he was doing all these little tests on her, and after each time, he'd be like, "Oh, I like your shoes," and she said, "Thank you," and with everything he commented on, she was saying thank you. And at one point, he's like, stop that, because he just couldn't, he was cracking up. He just couldn't believe how polite she was. And this is how she was until this day. I make sure, and they slack off a little bit as teenagers, but I want them to never take things for granted and to always appreciate what people are doing for you, whether it's a ride home from a sporting event or whatever. I want them to always use their manners and say thank you. And she does. On top of that, with Marissa, she's a great student, and the teachers love her for that. So when I go into those parent-teacher conferences and they tell me what a smart, bright, polite girl she is, and she gets great grades, and they just, and as a parent, you beam. You can't hope for anything more. I said, I tell them, I would rather you be a nice, polite, respectful kid with good grades than to be a snot or a nasty person with great grades. But the best case scenario is to do both. Have great grades and be a great kid. And the last couple of years at the parent-teacher conferences or the open houses when you meet the teachers, it's Lee and I walk out of there and we think, my God, we're doing something right. That to get the beaming reviews that you get from other people is just like, you can't hope for anything more. I was ecstatic and surprised. Surprised from the fact that we had tried for a couple of months, and the one time of year I didn't want to have a baby was around Christmas time. And lo and behold, I got pregnant, and Elena was due. She was actually due December 20th, and Lee's birthday is December 21st. And I knew because I had the prior C-section that I was also going to have another C-section. And I actually opted to have the C-section the week before, just so it would be as far away from Christmas as possible. But of course, I was absolutely ecstatic. I did have a miscarriage in between the two, and so I did have. I never thought that it would ever be an issue because Marissa was as simple as that. And then I miscarried, and then the second time it put doubt in my mind that maybe things may not go as smooth as they did the first time. You just assume everything goes perfect the first time. Why wouldn't it be perfect the second time? So that second pregnancy where I miscarried, which was very early on, I was about just under 3 months, it put doubt in my mind for Elena's. But once I got, up to that 4 or 5 month mark, I felt like I was okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about the miscarriage?
Well, it was obvious a surprise, and honestly, I didn't have any episode. I just went for a routine doctor appointment, and they couldn't find the heartbeat anymore. So it was just an odd thing. I didn't have any physical changes. It was a healthy visit. Lee didn't even come with me for this one, and it was just news when I got off the table that he told me. So, and that night we were actually supposed to be celebrating Grandpa's birthday at a restaurant with my family, and actually I hadn't even told my siblings I was pregnant yet. So that night, Lee and I didn't go because obviously I was upset and he was upset, so we didn't go to Grandpa's dinner. But that night, my parents, when they said, "Where's Rosette and Lee?" they told them not only was I pregnant, they didn't even know I was pregnant. So I was pregnant, I miscarried, and I'm going to the hospital the next day for a D&C. So that was all shocking to them because that was all out of left field. But I dealt with it, and Lee dealt with it fine because I always just felt like that sometimes happens. I guess with a little bit of medical background, that I have. I just felt like it happens. It doesn't mean anything. It's for whatever reason. My body's not allowing it to happen. There must be some reason, and it is what it is. And I just, move on from there. So later on, we tried again, and like I said, we were trying to shoot so that she wouldn't be due around that holiday, but she was. When Elena was born, she was probably one of the cutest babies just for the fact that she was born with so much hair. It was ridiculous. It was truly ridiculous how much hair she had on her head. And it was always a source of comedy. And what's funny is that she's a very